Hi, I'm Dr. Corrie Block, and I am an executive coach. I help leaders in large organizations to be more effective in an era of abundance and complexity that they find it very difficult to manage, so that they can themselves be healthier, happier, and live longer lives. And I'm really, really excited to be here on Voices of the Future.
We're absolutely honored and delighted to have Dr. Corrie Block visiting our studio and our offices today on the Voices of the Future. He is indeed a voice of the future, and what caught my attention more recently is that he talks about love in leadership, empathy in leadership, meaning in leadership, and a lot of other components as an executive coach that he has encountered. He is an awesome academic. He's got 3 PhDs. 1 is bad enough. 3 is awesome, and total respect for that. It's like running a triathlon. A marathon is good enough, but he's a triathlete, intellectual triathlete. So wonderful to have Corrie in our studios and to develop this mission of creating a meaningful future. Corrie, welcome.
You. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. Thank you. I got to correct you first of all. I've only got 2 PhDs, and I know it's still bad. My wife has forbidden me to do a 3rd one, right? By the way, because I used to collect them. Don't be impressed. This is my hobby. I don't watch football. I don't play golf. I read and I write journal articles. And a few years ago, I started collecting postgraduate degrees. So I have a few of them.
Right.
I've studied artificial intelligence at MIT and finance at Harvard. And finally, my wife was like, no, that's it. Like, you have to stop doing this. It looks ridiculous now. So since then, I've just been doing my own research, and every year I write a book.
Well, writing a book is great, and I wonder how many you'll write, because we were speaking about Professor Tony Buzan earlier on. He wrote 144 books.
That's amazing.
It's not even, you can't even visualize
benchmark set. That is
exactly.
I'm heading for it.
144.
It's amazing.
And he said the fast writing he could do was the skill that he had developed, which was mind mapping. And he was the founder of mind mapping and the creator of the human brain, and how we use metaphors and how our brain goes and connects with imagination and association. So what is your secret to be so prolific in writing?
First of all, I carve my time out months in advance. So I have my writing schedule done probably until the middle of next year already. Wow. And I block that time off and I protect it. Otherwise, I'll just get bogged down by the tyranny of the urgent.
Yep.
Secondly, I follow my curiosity, which is my #1 core value. Whatever I'm curious about, that's what I write about. And thirdly, all of my books seem to stem from some sort of irritation that I have with the world. I think it shouldn't be working like this, and I think it should be working like this, and so that I explore that. And I end up writing the book that I would have liked to have read when I became curious about that particular problem.
So Corrie, before we move forward, can we just go back in history, starting your life? In your early days, were there any inspirations, your mom or dad, your professor, teacher, anything who started to shape your life and to become who you are today?
100%, tons. I mean, we're all the products of the communities in which we're raised, right? So my parents, my larger family, I'm one of 100 first cousins in my family. I'm the eldest son of the eldest son of like a massive clan. In Canada, we have tribes in Canada. My clan is a tribe. We're huge. So I'm a product of my family, the religion in which I was raised, my friends. We were a very, very tight-knit group of friends. But then in my early 20s, like I really started to seek out mentors. We didn't call them coaches at that time. And mentoring wasn't really a formal idea in entrepreneurship. There were no accelerators, no incubators, no VCs to speak of. I was in Estonia in 1998 to start my first few companies there. And it was just amazing. But I had to seek out coaching from people who were very successful in ways that I wanted to be successful. And I would just buy them lunch and hope that they would, talk into my life. And so those people ended up becoming like huge mentors of mine. Some of them were physical and some virtual too, because I was devouring books by that age.
So you had a voracious appetite to learn and to read, which I can totally respect. My thing is that 20 years ago, coaching was an upcoming profession, and it wasn't even recognized. It is today. You're a coach.
Yes.
Everybody on LinkedIn is a coach. I'm a futurist. Everybody on LinkedIn is a futurist. So we're actually, our professions are getting diluted.
That's right.
Because everybody's getting on the bandwagon. So what I'd like to do is to go back again. Was there a moment when, before you ended up becoming a coach, where you said to yourself, this is how I would like to serve the world. This is how I would like to serve business, humanity, whatever. Anything that caught your attention at that time?
Well, I was always very interested in leadership. I was interested in why people follow other people, right? Because leadership isn't something that you can decide. You don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to be a leader. You wake up and you live a life worthy of being followed, and somebody else selects you as a leader. And that's how you know you're a leader, is if somebody's behind you.
Yeah.
So I was interested in what qualifies as a life worthy of being followed. And I used that in organizations for a number of years. My actual background is in entrepreneurship and strategy. But it wasn't until my clients asked me to coach them, and not even in those terms. I remember I was with one company, large company, 45,000 employees in like 18 different countries. And the chairman of the board said, hey, listen, I want to talk to you. And I met with him and he said, I want you to teach me to do what you do. I said, you mean strategy? He says, no. I want to talk to my people the way that you talk to my people. Can you teach me that? And I was like, wow, it's super interesting. But I'd never been asked that before. And that started what I just called, one-on-one meetings as a part of my strategy offering when I was doing structuring and restructuring an organization with companies. Right. But eventually turned into now my primary service offering, which is coaching. I think the biggest influence that I have in an organization as an organizational behaviorist is through the leadership. If the leaders can think differently, behave differently, build different habits, use different words, different frames, different metaphors, then the entire direction of the organization can change. And contrary to popular belief, big ships can turn faster, right? But you need to have that leadership with a massive paradigm shift in order to make that happen. I became interested in that. So
have you actually led bunches of people in your work?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, starting in my own organizations first, right? Yeah. By the age of 25, I had 100 in my the Freedom Youth Movement, which was a third-party educator in Estonia. And it was amazing, right? It was so fun. But I was just throwing it together. There was no manuals on this. There wasn't even a For Dummies book on how to do that. I was just trying to solve problems as quickly as I could and recruiting people as quickly as I could. So for me, that was the beginning. And then most of my work now has been up until about 8 years ago, leading teams in other people's companies, and then leading my own teams in my own companies. Right. So I exited my last my own strategy firm 8 years ago. Okay. And since then I've kind of earned the right to do whatever I want. So it's just me now, and I have a small team of media people, and I have my business manager, Simone, who's fantastic. But the larger teams that I lead now are inside my clients' companies.
Amazing. Okay, so you're like a multiplier within organizations in terms of knowledge and so on.
Yeah, 100%.
Can we just quickly anchor your academic background so that we can go into our business side? Sure. So what did you read at university? What are your PhDs about? Okay,
so first of all, I'm a college dropout. Okay,
Brilliant.
I dropped out after a year of college. The whole thing was boring for me. My parents, God bless them, I love them. We didn't have advanced placement or anything in my high school, so I skipped like 100 days of high school and still graduated with honors. And that's probably because I was a little bit more clever. I was bored. I was bored at school. So my mentors, when I was in my 20s, they saw this. And so all of my mentors, Carl, Darcy, Joyce, you know who you are, they all were saying, listen, Corey, you need to go back to school. And I said, no, there's nothing at an undergraduate level that will help me now. And they said, no, you need the academic language to teach other people how you did what you did. And so that's when I first started getting involved in that. So I wrote to the university in California and asked them, hey, listen, I want to take a master's in global leadership. And they were like, there, little boy, you've got a snowball's hope in hell of ever getting in this place. Go back to school. And I said, no, listen, here's some phone calls you should make. Ask about me. And there were like ministers of 4 different governments, SVPs from World Bank. And it was a pretty big list. And so they got back to me about a month later and they said, okay, listen, these are the hoops you need to jump through. You'll be on permanent academic probation and the rest is in your court. So
It's interesting. There is another voice in our book. His name is Peter Middlebrook. And at 16, 17, he basically took his guitar and got on his bike and went walkabout. I mean, he just discovered the world and so on. Today, he's a PhD. He's a global macroeconomist and a great advisor to the World Bank, IMF, governments, presidents, and so on. And he was a high school dropout. And so there's that theme there because, I was a great student until high school and so on, and then it was a little bit like I was just getting bored. And I also needed to move on. And my, just like your parents, my parents, people of my ethnic background and so on. If you're not a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or engineer, you don't qualify. So I was pushed into accounting, and at that time because of circumstances and so on, and I was the first thing in my life that I failed at was my chartered accountancy exam.
Oh, wow.
And, Corrie, my parents gave me love, they gave me warmth, they gave me everything. But one thing they did not do is teach me how to lose and how to fail.
Oh, wow.
Because I was always successful, and I won at sports, and I won at school, and I was always a winner. I didn't know how to lose.
Wow.
And I think part of my question to you and a coach is, how do we deal with and demystify failure? And how do top executives who I know are scared of failure more, in some cases, more than they are aspiring for success? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think failure is a learned behavior, actually. I don't think we're born with it.
Oh, yeah.
So here's the thing.
That's true. That's true.
I've got 5 kids. How many kids you got?
No, I don't.
You have kids? Okay, so I've got 5 kids. All of my kids can walk. Alhamdulillah, right? They can walk. But they didn't start out walking, right? They had to learn that. At some point, they look up at me and say, I'm going to learn how to walk. So they grab onto a table, and then what do? They never, ever get it right. Walking is a very complex movement.
Indeed.
So they fall down. Now, at that point, they don't look up at me and say, oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. I failed. I'm just going to be one of the humans that doesn't walk. I've seen them on TV. We can get chairs with wheels on them. And I'm like, and I don't look at them and say, oh, there, son, you've done, it was a good try. You know what? Me and your mom are going to support you in your non-walking human future. No. That's not how humans are built, right? We're built to either win or learn. That is it. Those are the 2 natural outcomes. So they learn how to not walk, and they stand up and try again. And they stand up and try again, and they stand up. And then at some point, I think probably around the age 5 or 6, when we can understand language really well, because before that, when we try something and it doesn't work, we just get angry. We get angry and we try it again, right? At the age when we can negotiate, somebody in our lives that we love, that we trust, that we respect, and we believe they love, they trust, and they respect us too, they tell us that it's okay to stop trying. And that's when we learn to fail as a strategic choice, to forego the learning opportunity and to simply not give it another shot. That's it. I don't think that we're born with that, right? If you look at toddlers, like they just keep trying and trying.
It's
an
interesting insight. Thank you. Yes. No, it's true. It's very true. And I was just playing in my head, what was my learned behavior with my parents. We were just excelling, and my father was much more, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger.
Right.
And my mom was much more affectionate and loving, and just hovering and protecting me. And I think that's part of my upbringing. But and I think I had a fear of failure. And the other big fear that I sometimes am being open and vulnerable with you is the fear of unfulfilled potential.
Sure. I have that too.
You do.
That and irrelevance. I think irrelevance is my number one fear. I look we're not very good at making eye contact with ourselves in the mirror. Right? So I've made a discipline out of this. I look at myself in the mirror and say, and just acknowledge the fear. I'm afraid that at some point I will be irrelevant. And that's a big thing. It's a big thing.
I lost a young uncle a couple of days ago, and it happened literally overnight. He was healthy, and he was on a treadmill, and then he had a knot in his stomach, and then apparently it was a clot, which they couldn't diagnose until it was too late, 6-8 hours later, and he died. He shouldn't have died. I mean, you don't die of that kind of clot. And this is literally a couple of days ago. And I was talking to his wife yesterday, and it was really a question of what legacy do we leave? And I've done my tombstone exercises and so on. But this was real. When I did my exercise, to me, one of the things I came out with was to make a difference in the world, to find a way to do this thing. and Make a Difference is MAD, which is one of my companies. It's
I
called
know.
MAD.
Yeah.
And then my charitable work was about 100% MAD, which means help one person, but 100%, help one school, 100%, help
Amazing.
one vaccine is 100%.
Wow.
Rather than saying, here's $1 million, do what you like. To me, that just doesn't sort of resonate. I'd like to actually help and in that process feel much fulfilled. Sure. I was reading a very nice quote, be selfish, go help someone.
Yeah, good. No, look, helping behavior is contagious and addictive, right?
Yeah.
We're a social species. We've learned about 500,000 years ago that we can't survive the planet alone.
Yeah.
And so we help each other. And when we help each other and we see other people helping each other, it becomes contagious. We feel socially required to do it. And so I have very similar to you. I've since living and working in Yemen, I was there for 5 years. Wow. And so since being there, I've been helping to run a charity that feeds the poor and educates the marginalized, and it's super rewarding.
Yeah,
and it's I tell my staff all the time, look, we can't fix everything, but we are everything to these 10,000 families. That's it.
Yeah. And I think we end up getting more
Yeah.
out of that rather than what we are giving. And
100%.
I think that
100%.
was my recognition and self-awareness that I discovered that how much the little kids were helping me in terms of their humanity and their connection. So I'm quite emotional about those things because I've always wanted to do more, and I strive for perfection. I honestly, I just want to have a magic wand and I want to fix shit, basically. And I don't, and it frustrates me. And I step back and I get into this environment. How can I use the creativity of my brain? I have access, I have resources, I have people.
Sure.
What can I do to pull this together? And Voices of the Future to me is my second attempt. My first attempt was Make a Difference, my charity. This is my second attempt to actually fundamentally help to change the future. So thank you for being an integral part of this, and I'm sure we'll do wonderful things together.
I'm an excellence-ish person. I'm not a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I think perfectionism gets in the way of getting done.
I agree.
Right? Nobody's perfect. I'm not a god. You're not a god, right? We're not prophets.
Yeah.
So practice doesn't make perfect because nothing makes perfect. Practice makes done. Done makes money, and that's what you actually want. Or in your case, done makes a difference, and that's what you actually want, and that's what actually changes the lives of the people that you're impacting.
Yeah,
is that you get it done, not that you get it perfect.
Yeah. So I'll go deeper into that one. A lot of people call me eccentric. I dare say you are to some extent. And my Professor Buzan explained the definition of eccentric as he sees it. He said, here's a normal distribution curve.
Yeah.
Eccentric, by definition, means ex-center. So you're off-center.
Correct.
You're the outlier. Yes. You're the 1-2% on the edge, which basically brings about change, makes a difference, changes the world, helps people, does something. So I am literally as an outlier on the edge. And that's why I always have difficulty sort of fitting in terms of my mainstream thought process.
Yeah, sure.
And therefore, one of the outcomes for me was to become a futurist. So at least I have a bigger canvas to draw on.
That's right. Yeah, I get that.
So that's how I developed myself. We've got 3 beautiful books in front of us, just changing gears. Tell us about them. This one is interesting. You said this was part of your irritation with people that you were meeting.
Yeah, no. As an executive coach, you get to work with lots of different kinds of executives, and I started to notice there were significant differences between high-performing executives and medium or low-performing executives, and there were significantly low-performing executives. And so the differentiators and drivers of those who were very good, very high-performing, really productive, were fitness, confidence, discipline, connecting, rest, and competition. And my take on each of those things is not normal. Obviously, like discipline and confidence, both skills, not character traits. These are not things you're born with. These are things that you learn over a period of time. Competition, but not for the sake of winning, for the sake of self-development. So we only become as strong as we can become when we're faced with a competitor that is pushing us to beat our own limits, to break our own world records, that kind of thing. So it was a different take on some real fundamentals that I find drive amazing change. Both individually in the life of executives, and then, of course, it cascades down into the leadership culture of the organization.
Yeah. You must have been asked this question many times before in terms of high performance and high potential.
Sure.
I'm actually working with a group of 60 high potentials, and in a top organization, one of the best organizations in the Emirates, and they are super smart young people, and I'm just trying to wrestle with them every now and then in terms of high potential, high performance. They are in a high performance environment.
Yeah, sure.
They've been picked up as high potential. They have literally 50,000 people around them, and they're the top 60.
Sure. Potential for what?
Growth, development, leadership, future. So they're all between 25 and 40, and they'll be the presidents of companies. There'll be ambassadors. There'll be ministers. Those are the kinds of it's top government, semi-government organization, and that's where they're coming out from. So that's the potential that they are tapping into.
Right.
And I was been talking to them just recently, last month, and in a whole session, and the vast majority of them were engineers. That's okay. So there's a lot of groupthink going on there.
Sure.
And I spoke about strategic groupthink. Then I sort of said, okay, you're talking about changing the world, and you're in a big, massive, powerful organization. Have you been to China? How many people have been to China? 0.
Yeah.
How many people have been to Indonesia?
Yeah.
Bali. No, Bali doesn't count.
That's
a holiday.
Like outside.
Yeah, exactly. You go to Jakarta and you look at the 350 million people there.
Yeah.
How many people have been to India? And a few raised their hands.
Yeah.
So the moment you start doing that, the half the world's population, which represents the shift in the geopolitical shift that's going on towards the east and so on. And I say, how can you be high potential as a global players when half the world is something that you don't encounter, and you live in the UAE bubble, which is a beautiful bubble, and I'm very happy and grateful to be here.
Yeah.
So in that kind of scenario, they have to perform, but they have to build for the future.
Sure.
How would you coach that kind of a team?
Well, first of all, they need to understand that diversity is profitable, right? It is intrinsically profitable. It is the only thing, like in finance, we say that diversification of investment is the only free lunch. It's the only thing that will absolutely get you more consistently than not doing it. Okay, that's the only principle that will for sure work all the time.
Right.
And it's the same in input-seeking behavior and quality decision-making. Diversification of input is going to lead to a better quality of decision. So surrounding yourself with people who are different than you by definition and embracing the tension that comes along with that is going to lead to better decision-making, higher quality of execution. And that is an easy free lunch. So when you're talking about like exposure to different areas of the world, I think also exposure to different levels of thought, different kinds of educational background, different kinds of religious background. Definitely the easiest and lowest hanging fruit is gender balance on decision-making bodies. That's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer.
The math is very clear. Right? It's the thing that you should do if you're greedy and selfish and want more net profit at the end of the year. So if you're not doing it, then it's because you value something more than money. And I'd love to know what that is.
True, and you mentioned gender, and I'm a great proponent and supporter of women on boards, women on teams, and stuff like that. And I've done active work, and actually trained them and developed women and recommended them and so on. So that's one. That's like you said, that's the easy one. Second is age. So the youth boards that I talk about is the diversity of age, because 100%. Their thinking is different. And then I get into all sorts of things. You need anthropologists, you need social scientists, you need teachers, you need all sorts of musicians, and, because they bring in a different kind of diversity. I don't think the management groups have quite got to that. They're just about grappling with women.
It just sounds like work to them, right? You wanted me to bring in a musician? Why would I do that? Like, it just sounds like a
you learn empathy, which is this book, I guess, but for musicians. Sorry.
No, I'm sure that you have the similar experience that I have. I can't tell you the number of times I've walked into a board of directors and they say, oh, Corey, we're glad to have you here. We don't really have any tension. Things are kind of moving smoothly on the board. And I look around and I'm like, you're all
the same
middle-aged men from exactly the same culture. And I'm like, no wonder you have no friction, right? You have one brain. You were all educated in the same worldview. You read the same books, watched the same cartoons. You're listening to the same podcast producers. Of course there's no friction. Why would there be? So, your smooth running board is a massive red flag.
I like that. So, moving on, I'd just like to go through the books, and then we'll drill deeper into your personal sort of insights into the various things that I love this.
Thank
You said it's on meaning. What does that
That's
mean
right.
to
So,
you?
first of all, I think anything that you do with half of your life every day should be as meaningful as possible. Because it's not a job. Whatever you're doing, it's not a job. It's half of your life. You're never going to get any of that time back. And I think we dishonor ourselves and our experience when we say, oh, it's not my life, it's just a job. And I think that language that came out of the early 80s in response to the shareholder supremacy movement that allowed us to devalue our human resources or human capital and say, we're not going to kick a bunch of apex predators out of their tribe. We're just going to reduce the labor budget by 20%, and that allowed us to make terrible decisions on people's behalf. But it started this idea that somehow your life was other than your work. Work-life balance became the psychological term that we use to describe that. But in psychology, that's not true. There is no work-life balance because there's nothing other than life. And your work is a massive half, if not more, of your life. In fact, it's so easily defined that when you meet someone for the very first time, they'll ask you two questions, right? Your name, so they know how to address you. Second question is, what do you do? Not what are your values? How many kids do you have? What's the sport you play on the weekends? No, I want to know who you are. And in society, who you are is what you do for work. That is the value that you add to this to the community in exchange for a share of the resources. Yeah. It's a million-year-old design that leads us to that. So our work is us, and I want us to embrace that. And that doesn't mean you have to love what you do for work. But if you love why you're doing it and you love the people that you're with, what you do doesn't really matter. Nobody's waking up passionate about balancing Excel spreadsheets today, right? Nobody's waking up thinking, oh man, I can't wait to move tires around the world or design another whiteboard presentation, or PowerPoint presentation. Nobody's excited about what they do for work. The what is so low on the scale. And if we're thinking about the what, it's because we don't have meaning in the why or the who. And I look, I love Simon. I love the book. I love Start With Why, but I don't start with why. I start with who. We are a primarily social species, and we don't even know why we exist until we're in dialogue with the society and the communities that are around us. We find out, we discover our why in dialogue. We put ourselves out. I'm a singer. And then somebody else says, yes, you're a singer. And that's when we define ourselves as a singer. That's when we find our why. We don't find our why in isolation. It's always in dialogue.
It's interesting insight. There were two words, before we get into that, there are two words that irk me a lot, that irritate me, and you used both of them. And I'd like you to drill deeper into that. One of them was labor, and the other is capital. Human to me is neither labor nor capital.
Exactly. No. I know capital, right?
Yes,
I've studied finance. Yeah. I'm great with numbers. Yeah. Humans do not behave at all like capital. Yeah. Capital, you invest something, it has a certain appreciation. There's certain market dynamics that are predictable about capital. Yeah. Humans are not. No, we are messy. We are weird and wonderful and creative and loving, and sometimes also terrible and mean and depressed, and sometimes all on the same day. And if you're married, then all to the same person on the same day. Yeah. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to manage. Yeah. And so there's a lot of things that we've come up with in human resources, right? I find they're just myths. They're stories, bedtime stories that HR professionals tell ourselves to make us feel better about having control over human behavior, when actually we have very, very little control over human behavior.
And I think we are not doing justice to ourselves when it comes to that, because even our balance sheet, for example, does not recognize the value of human beings. So there is no space there. Perhaps goodwill, but that's more general. But if you remove a Steve Jobs, something happens. If you remove Mark Zuckerberg, something will happen to the value. So there is a value. It's not recognized anywhere. So there's human value is not recognized.
Right. So here's where the value is. Okay, I get this question a lot. Why? If your job is your life, and I put in 10 hours and you put in 10 hours, but you get paid more than me, is your life worth more than mine? Right? Yeah. It's an interesting question, but actually that's not true. The reason why we pay our executives more, the reason why Steve Jobs, his vacuum from the organization is valued differently on that balance sheet, is because he bears more risk and responsibility on behalf of the community. So the decisions that Steve was making could wipe out 10,000 families and all of their economic income all at the same time. And that's why we pay our executives more. We don't pay them more because their life is worth more. That's a silly idea. That's ridiculous. I mean, you just have to say it out loud and that's ridiculous. We pay them more because the risk that they take on behalf of our economic tribe can make or break our tribe for the year, can make or break 15, 20, 200,000 families for that year. And we pay them to bear the risk and make those decisions consistently well, over and over and over again.
Risk would be one, creation of abundances would be the other. So if you pay them more and pay them better because they can create abundance, they can create opportunity,
Absolutely
and
agree with
therefore
that.
not just the risk for the people that are under their management, but an opportunity for hundreds of thousands who are not. Perhaps also that.
Yeah, I absolutely subscribe to that, yeah.
Cool. So,
So that's meaning at work.
Meaning and work, and then this was my absolute catalyst to invite you. Love at work. I constantly get asked this question when I go to a board and other companies and so on about the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, profit. Probably the other way around: profit, perhaps people, and then maybe planet. Probably in that
I hear
order.
you, yes. Yeah.
So I introduced a fourth, which is prosperity and purpose. So we need to have some kind of core purpose within the organization. And last but not the least, and more meaningful in our current environment in the world, which was the fifth P to me: people, planet, profit, prosperity. And the last one was peace and love.
Amazing.
And without peace around us, without peace within us, without peace within our teams and our tribes, and without having that sort of sense of love, empathy, connection, life is not good. What kind of a company are you?
Exactly right.
And I just wanted to it's a rhetorical question. What are your thoughts about something like that, having the 5 Ps of leadership or a company?
The first 3 are very easy. Yes, absolutely. Profit. You need profit in an organization in order for it to run. Otherwise, it's not going to run. That's the basic level of fuel. You need people in order to make that profit. And the planet is the environment in which we live. Right. So I'm not an environmentalist. I don't care about the planet. The planet has been trying to kill us for 1 million years. Okay. Disease, famine, flood. It has been working its butt off to try to get rid of us, and we are still here. It will continue to try to kill us. And at the moment, we're not doing a good job of fighting back. That's the problem. We need to fight back against the planet's adaptation so that we can remain here longer than it wants us to stay.
Aren't we screwing up the planet?
A little bit. I think maybe we're just helping it along. It's got its own agenda, right? The planet's been trying to kill us for a long time. I'm not worried. At some point, humans, we're gonna disappear. Guess what's gonna happen to the Earth? It'll keep spinning. It'll still be here. But it's not the planet I'm trying to protect. It's my home. That's what I'm trying to protect. I'm trying to carve out home on this planet for as many humans as possible for as long as possible, because I want to see what kind of technology we're capable of creating in 1,000 years from now. I think that's worth existing for, right? Even if I'm not going to be here to see it. But I don't have to love the planet for that. I got to love my people, and that's where I come at from the planet thing.
I think that's you're opening a can of worms, and if I go down that rabbit hole, we'll be here for another 20 minutes.
We can do that next time.
We can do that the next time.
On prosperity, absolutely. I think we're living in the most abundant age in all of human history. There's so much to go around. One of our biggest problems now is complexity, comfort, convenience. I think we don't have the evolutionary psychological tools or adaptive mechanisms we need.
Hyperconsumption is another huge, big problem, and I think that's something we struggle from. And last one, as I said, peace and love.
So like our ancestors, you're the product of 10,000 successful generations of survival and adaptation, right? And you're the latest iteration in that million-year-old improving design, okay? Your ancestors survived this world by knowing who loved them and who didn't, and who they loved and who they didn't. That's it. But we've removed that language from our organizations. We've become professional, and we've got professional distance, which is why we can talk about empathy and leadership, but not the highest form of it. Okay?
Which is?
Love.
Okay.
Right? We can talk about servanthood and leadership, but not its highest form. We can talk about psychological safety in our organizations, but not the highest form of psychological safety. Why can't we talk about that? Okay? So it doesn't make sense to me that the highest potential quality of relationship we have between humans is intentionally exiled from the place where we spend the most amount of time with each other, right? And there's got to be an efficiency there that we can capture if we get into that. Because when you're in a relationship where you say, yes, I love this person and they love me back, there's a shortcut there for critical feedback, for effective trust, for respect, for honor, for making mistakes. There's lots of room to absorb mistakes if you're in a relationship with somebody that you believe loves you back and you love them.
Yeah.
Right? So all of these things that we're fighting to create great processes and culture for in our organizations can all be shortcutted by a million-year-old mechanism that all of our ancestors used to survive. We just need to bring the word back into the boardroom. If we do that, and if we do it really well, not only is it effective in terms of leadership, but it's profitable on the bottom line. That's the argument that I'm making here.
I see. So today is about voices of the future. You are a voice of the future. How is, and love, meaning, and these are skills, these are learnable things, but love and meaning, or meaning and love, are they soft or are they hard? Skills.
Depends on your definition. I put it right in the introduction. Like if you're looking for a soft skills book, this is not it. If you want somebody to tell you you're good enough just as you are as a leader, this is not your book. This is a hard skills book. It is difficult to learn, impossible to master.
Yep.
Love is a choice, right? It's not a feeling. You don't like just feel. I'm not with my wife because I feel like I love her, right? We have disagreements, and if I was waiting just to always have that feeling, we wouldn't be together. I wouldn't be with anybody if I was just tapping. But so love is the conscious choice to continue adding value to someone else's life from my life, if necessary, to create that value. That's hard. That's hard when you have 10,000 families to feed and you're trying to figure out how to balance the needs of those 10,000 families with the desires of a board of directors. Yeah, it's tough. Love is tough. If I think it would be interesting actually to have a board of directors meeting where the overarching or guiding principle is what is the most loving way that we can steward the resources that are available to us, with the shareholders being, of course, one stakeholder group, but employees, customers, community being other stakeholder groups. And we have to decide how to balance a loving response to all of them, recognizing that it's never going to be possible to love every individual, right? Because people have differing views of what love might mean in terms of the allocation of resources.
Yep.
But I think if we start there as our default position, we'll make better decisions. And I think we're going to be more profitable as a result of that.
Indeed. We spoke about boards, and I feel that the current structure of boards is an inefficient way of dealing with today's world. So we spoke about youth boards, shadow youth boards who will come in and support them. The third component to me is what I would call a wisdom council.
Nice.
So the younger ones, so here's a board, so let's say the average age, I know the average age of boards in the US is 62, 63, but let's just say it's 55, just to be in the middle. Then you need the 25-year-olds and you need the 85-year-olds.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that wisdom council brought in a structure, in a nice way, and this youthful voice brought into in a nice way.
Sure.
And as part of Voices of the Future, I'm actually addressing both those. The voices of wisdom, and not even the 22-year-olds, but the 15, 16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I'm actually getting those in. And this, to me, is the new construct of making great decisions, whether we look at meaning or love or empathy. Sure. As a futurist, another very strong positioning and a view that I have is that, and I get this question all the time, is that, technology this and AI that. And I'm saying to them, listen guys, stop, time out. The more technological the world becomes, because anything that can be digitized will be, like it'll be 100 times faster and 1,000,000 times cheaper. But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, love, harmony, intuition, imagination, creativity, spirit, 100%. Common sense, soul, all of those elements will be 1,000,000 times more valuable.
Yes.
Focus on those, use this to serve you, and that's the future.
100%.
And therefore, when I see books on love and meaning, I'm attracted to that almost immediately, because to me, that is very much the future. Technology is an enabler.
100%.
And creator of abundance, but our humanity is what leads.
And I think you're absolutely right. And we have an opportunity now to lead that conversation. Because in 130 years ago, the average level of income in the United States, which was the most developed country at that time, was about $1 a day. Right now, $2 a day, adjusted for inflation, is the abject poverty line. In only 1.5 centuries, we as humanity have decided that no human should live at the same level that the highest level of median income was living at.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing thing. Look, we're not where we should be, okay? But we're not where we were.
That's true.
We're living in the most peaceful, most abundant, most technologically advanced time. And my life expectancy has gone up by 15 years since I was born. And I didn't earn that. I didn't
and it will go further, because every year that you live, you add another 2 years.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, so I mean, we should start from that position where my work, whatever I do for work, is an act of gratitude. First of all, it's an act of gratitude for being born into a world of abundant technology that I did not create for myself. I didn't invent my phone. I didn't design my car. I get to play with those things because I add value in exchange for a share of the resources that gives me access to healthcare and communications and transportation that I didn't invent.
Yeah.
I didn't make that for me, right? So my work is my act of gratitude for that, right? And it's not just a job. It's half of my life, and anything I do with half of my life should be as meaningful as possible. And we have that opportunity now to help every person on the planet to find and latch onto that meaning, understanding, look, what you do for work is so far down the chain in terms of what's important to you. We will collect garbage and be very happy doing it if we know why we're doing it and we like the people we're doing it with. We're very happy to do that. You know what I mean? Like what fades away.
I mean, I do the Ikigai exercise regularly, and I'm actually doing it with a top-level executive tomorrow evening, and then she's going through a lot of change in her life and so on. So I said, why don't we just sit down and go through that? Because she's not being able to prioritize her life in a way that what she's good at, what she's getting paid for, what makes her happy, and what the world needs.
Right.
And put all of those 4 elements together to create something which is her core. And I do that regularly. Yep. So and interestingly enough, you said about looking in the mirror. I don't do it enough with myself, which I think I should. Now talking to you sort of inspired me in that process. A couple of questions which are more personal, in the sense that I think personal to people, parents, for example. In this massively changing, rapidly transforming world, they're kids. You've got 5 kids. What's your advice to them? Should they be worried? Should they be excited? Should they change behavior? Should they learn new tricks? I mean, what's the game?
Yeah, honestly, do whatever you want. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. There's so much abundance in the world that probably you'll be fine no matter what you choose to do.
Right.
So you can follow your heart, and probably there will be a niche, because we have such a big population and it's so well connected. You'll find a niche that'll pay you to do whatever that you want.
That is true, but I think most parents, even today, the number of parents have come to me, Tharak, you're a futurist. My son I'm really worried about him. And I said, no, he's a nice guy. He's going to university this year, and he applied to do a degree in psychology.
It's fine.
He won't get a job. I said that to him, and he's a banker, because he wants, why can't he do finance or law or something like that?
My son, when he's 22 now, okay? He's here, he's working in DIFC, he's in cybersecurity, absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
When he was 18, he came to me just like shaking. He's like, Dad, I got something to talk to you about. And you need to sit down. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's drugs. He's on drugs. That's it. Right. And he's like breaking some news to me. He goes, Dad, I just don't think I want to go to university after school. And he's like, and you can imagine, with somebody with my LinkedIn profile as your dad, you think there's this implicit fear that,
Sure.
Anyway, the expectation wasn't there. So I was like, oh no, listen, kiddo, that's fine. When I was 26 years old, I had 5 companies of my own, right? When Jeff Bezos was 26, he was flipping burgers at McDonald's. Like, it actually doesn't matter. When my dad was young, right? My grandfather was very emancipative and forward thinking. So he said, look, you can be anything. You can be something other than a doctor if you want to. And so he was an engineer, right? So he moved from doctor to engineer. And when I was being raised, my dad was very emancipative and very empowering. So he said, you can be anything you want, right? And now me and my generation, leading my son and his generation, I raised him to believe not just that he could be something other than a doctor, that he could be anything, but that he could be everything. You can be everything you want. You want to spend 5 years as a musician, you want to spend 10 years as a doctor, you want to spend 15 years in cybersecurity or graphic design, fine. You get one life. We can absorb information very quickly now. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different ways for us to get that
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
It's getting faster and faster for us to learn those things if we're disciplined to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can build 3 or 4 careers in your lifetime and be fully happy in each of them.
Brilliant. Let's talk about your mastery as an executive coach. Do you think everybody needs an executive coach, and why?
Look, I think we are a social species, and everybody performs only at their very best only when they're with someone. Okay, there's no such thing as an Olympic athlete without an Olympic coach. You won't find that. But that's the same in every top level human game, right? The highest level violin players in the world have coaches. The highest level surgeons in the world have coaches. And that's because it's intrinsically true of us as humans that we play our best only when we're with somebody that's watching the game while we're playing it and knows the game really well. Like Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, fantastic footballers. They've passed the Ballon d'Or back and forth for like a decade. Neither of them are waking up in the morning going, you know what, I know enough about football that I can stop being coached. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and that's why the majority of the CXOs and the FTSE 100 and the Fortune 500 have coaches. It's because they've recognized that's how they get there, that's how they stay there. You're only going to play at your best when you're with somebody that coaches the game at your level. And we had the discussion earlier about like there's so many coaches, so many futurists, right? Just because you can coach football doesn't mean you can coach an Olympic football team. And that's the thing, like when you get past, like coaching up to C-2, C-1, probably you're going to be okay with a non-advisory coach who's good in your industry or good in leadership or management or psychology. As soon as you cross into that C-suite level, the game changes completely. You know this, you were there. You were there. And so the coaching that you need at an Olympic level is not the same as you need for a national team.
Yeah. So how do you select that? What is the criteria? Because as I said, there's just so much noise in terms of coaching around there. And I ask this question regularly. How does one select that? How does a CEO, a chairman, board member, as he's looking at making an impact in terms of getting coaches in? Because there are a lot of flaky people out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's your criteria that you would like to?
For me, there's a minimum 10 years of business experience, minimum 10 years of coaching. If you want to coach somebody in the C-suite of an organization of 5,000 employees or more, there's high risk. Because if the coach is pretty good and they're an advisory coach, then the CEO may make different decisions as a result of that coaching. And if the coaching is not good, you may lose 100 families out of the economic tribe. That's too high of a risk to take. Make sense?
Yeah.
So 10 years of business experience, 10 years of coaching experience, and at least a master's degree or some kind of equivalent in business or strategy or finance or something, so you understand the game. You have to understand the game to coach a player in the game at that level, right? Again, you're never going to find an Olympic coach asking their athlete, hey, what do you think you should do today? What have you not tried? That's just ridiculous. In every other industry in the world, if you're playing at the highest level, maybe your coach can't play at the level you play, but they can coach at the level you play. And that's a totally different thing. So having a coach that can coach at the level you play is unbelievably important when you're dealing with the responsibility you take for that many families and the livelihoods of that many families.
Interesting perspective. Thank you for that. Let's just quickly do for about a few minutes, what I call the rapid fire segment. Quick answers, whatever.
Yes.
Exactly.
3.
Well, not that short, but nearly that short.
Right,
but you can probably use a phrase or something like that. And then we'll start closing. So, first question, what keeps you up at night? What scares you the most?
Nothing keeps me up at night.
Okay.
I sleep really well. I wake up really well. The only fear that I have for myself is irrelevance. But honestly, I've lived 3 lives already. You just look at my LinkedIn page. I've lived way more life than is ever due to me. And so I'm using the life that I have left, however much that is, to add as much value as I can to the world. But honestly, nothing scares me.
So if
no, that's not true.
Yeah.
Skydiving, heights scares me. So I've just got my solo skydiving license.
Okay.
I completely lied to you there.
Yeah.
I shake on ladders. It's really emasculating actually, because I have this terrible fear of heights.
Yeah.
But I'm working on my own neuroplasticity by getting my solo skydiving license. So I'm on jump 14 now. Okay. It's a very, very humbling, very sobering experience.
Yeah. It is, and I've done a lot of. I don't have those kinds of fears, but I did firewalking 3 or 4 times, and I know and that is an interesting experience.
Yeah,
you come out feeling really quite empowered.
Yeah, sure. Have you done the cold water baths too? Wim Hof thing?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's fantastic.
No, I haven't done that.
Yeah, you learn a lot about yourself sitting in like freezing water for a minute. It's amazing.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. So you're just taking me off.
Yeah, go.
My brain
This
just
is supposed to be rapid fire, and I completely hijacked it. That's my fault. It's my fault.
No worries. I'm the genie. I look like one, and I give you a magic one, and you can be whoever you want to be. Who would that person be?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Do I have to be somebody other than me?
No, you could be yourself.
I think I would choose the life that I have over any other life that I'm aware of.
That's amazing. We are on your 100th birthday, and I know you're going to live that long because there's longevity. And
I keep telling my kids I'm immortal until proven otherwise.
Exactly. Fair enough. On your 100th birthday, we're all coming there to celebrate.
Yeah.
What are we celebrating?
I am an honored father, an honored husband, a polymath scholar, and a globally recognized business strategist. That's what we're celebrating.
Okay. What's your final piece of advice to CEOs, chairmen, people out there? Just simple advice that they should wake up tomorrow morning or today and start taking that action.
Yeah, humans, not resources.
Okay. What's the role of love in our future?
The same as it was in our past. We learn to survive this world by knowing who loved us and who didn't, who we loved and who we didn't. That is how we'll survive our future as well.
Okay. And finally, to young people who seem to be in a hurry or who seem to be different, perhaps we don't even understand them that well, what fatherly advice do you give a young 12, 13, 14-year-old in terms of looking into the future?
First of all, I'm sorry. It's not your fault.
Okay.
We raised you to believe that you would get an award for everything you touched.
Yes.
We raised you to believe that you could eat whatever you wanted within 30 minutes or it's free. We raised you to believe that you were good enough, smart enough to do absolutely everything you want in your life. And genetically, that's probably not true. Our entire society has been designed toward lying to our children. And we told you that the world would never hurt. We padded your playgrounds. And anytime that you were bullied or picked on, we defended you and we stepped in, right? So we taught you that the world is not going to hurt you. And that's not true. When my first wife and I, we were always really honest about this. We got this part right. We would always say, we're not raising children. We're raising adults. We have 18 years to prepare these humans for a world that does not love them and will not tolerate them half as much as we will. They need to experience and heal. Otherwise, they won't be ready. And I'm very happy to say that both of my kids from my first marriage, they're contributing members of society. They're adults. They've grown up. They've moved out. And I don't know how much. I think probably in spite of me more than because of me. But I'm really proud of them for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think the advice that I would give them is the world is not as fluffy as it appears now.
Okay, it's very deep, very insightful. And to close, if you were to put a message in a bottle for somebody to pick it up in 10 years' time and you threw the bottle in the sea, what's the message that you will leave for the future today with what you know today?
Pay attention to evolutionary psychology and neuroscience. Because that's actually going to be the predictor of how we work. Yeah. All of it, our interactions with AI, our interactions with each other, all of it is going to be governed by a million-year-old design. And we're just the latest iteration of it.
Yeah, just one second. We've been talking to Dr. Corrie Block, and we have gone through all sorts of things from neuroplasticity to neuroscience. That's what we ended with. But we've spoken about love and meaning and connection and humanity and technology and friends and family and business. It's been a very wide-ranging conversation and very deep and meaningful. And I certainly personally have been touched and connected with some of those things that he said, and it resonated with me, and I would be thinking about some of them. So if one can think about a conversation after the conversation has ended, it's been a good one. So we'd like to thank Corrie for being with us today, and hopefully he would be an integral part of a movement to help the future to be a better place at the Voices of the Future. Corrie,
thank you
very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much,
It's a real pleasure.
My pleasure.